We made frequent trips to Pittsburgh, Kansas to see Gloria's family and friends, including her Uncle Al and Aunt Louise. New Year's Day 1966, we took Al and Louise to Kansas City to see a newly released hit movie, Sound of Music. We took Rosa May, my mother, to see it later that summer. She thought movies were worldly and almost never went with us. But she cried at intermission and said, "Oh, how I wish little Timmy could see this." Little Timmy had already seen it 3 times. My career as manager with Spencer Shoe Company was reaching crunch time. I had hired Ann, a wonderful young assistant, and several salespeople, including my own cousin, Joe Weed. But our success brought complications. The company wanted me to take over a bigger store in Oklahoma, quit school. That summer, we hit the road for a Florida vacation. It's what the parents had always done. We stayed with Uncle Bus and Aunt Millie. My cousin Ray Weed was now a giant. He married the lovely Beverly Emerson and would make a career out of pastoring churches. The Twins were now a hit musical group touring the country. They simply added a voice to make it a trio and brought in their little brother Rich as a piano player. Only Rich wasn't so little anymore. Alex Clattenburg, one of their agents, would one day become pastor of a big church himself. I traded in our old Chrysler for a brand new Renault. It was the first new car I'd ever owned, and it was the cheapest one made with a lawnmower-sized motor. It's a miracle we even got to Florida. Uncle Bus was now pastoring a church in Orlando. He was always moving. We used to tease him and say he only had 2 years of sermons, and that's why he moved. Hey, maybe it was. On that July 4th, 1966, we all packed up for a visit to Daytona Beach. Alex Clattenburg, who was dating one of the twins, drove his big Cadillac, or was it a Lincoln, whatever it was. It towered over my poor little Renault, but I didn't care. I owned a new car, even if it had a lawnmower engine. My cousin Joe was there. He had worked for me at Shoppers Fair when he went to college in Springfield. So we hit the beaches of Daytona. It was hot, and there was the smell of suntan oil in the air, and I was maintaining the family tradition of vacation in Florida. I sometimes wondered what it would be like to actually live there, but then where would we go for vacation? Indiana? Even the water was warm, but it was a refreshing wet contrast to the burning sand. And I found myself retracing the steps of my father, even in film. Uncle Bus got a good shot of the cousins running down the beach. Later in the month, I traveled to St. Louis and saw a game between the Dodgers and the Cardinals. The Dodgers were my heroes, including the unhittable pitching sensation Sandy Koufax. By that time, I'd finally made my decision. I wasn't going to make a career out of the Spencer Shoe Company, and I wasn't going to go back to college either. I was going to South Bend, following the well-worn trail of Jim and Bill before me. I was going to be the new youth director at Calvary Temple. I'm not sure exactly how Dad sold it to the board. He had already hired 2 of his other sons. Maybe he had enough power to do what he wanted. Maybe he explained that he was getting me on the cheap. We would be living in the new church apartment when it was finished, and the new church would have 2 apartments, so it wasn't going to be a big burden on anybody, and then they were going to pay me the grand sum of $50 a week whether I wanted it or not. Bill was gone. He had tried the Peace Corps, but one of his references, his counselor at CBI, had betrayed his confidence and reported his struggles with his sexual orientation. The counsel happened to be the son of the Assemblies of God General Superintendent Tom Zimmerman. When we learned this story years later, we would wonder at this breach of ethics. Was it motivated by church politics? Did the young Zimmerman want to keep the rival weeds in check? It crushed Bill and his faith. Sometimes even Tim managed to get on the payroll. We moved into the new church on October 2nd, 1966. We finished putting in the theater seats the midnight before. It was a moment of singular triumph for Mom and Dad. The church was now theirs. They had shaken all the old ghosts. I had my own office next to Dad's where I would run the youth. Dedication Sunday, December 11th, 1966. Dad, who knew nothing of how Bill had been betrayed, invited in Zimmerman to preach. He was the general superintendent. I was on the platform then. Jim was in Japan. Tim was on the front row with a friend. Bill was buried deep in the audience, no doubt proud of Mom and Dad. But with Zimmerman at the podium, what was going through Bill's mind about God and life and hypocrisy in the church? Christmas that year was slim pickings in our church apartment, but it would get better in the coming years, and we would get to eat turkey later in the day at the folks' house on Addison Street.